Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, my volume's way too low. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Q&A. This is something that should be way more regular than it is. I don't know why we keep screwing that up, but for some reason, it's a very easy format to do, and yet, for some reason, I consistently don't do it consistently, which is dumb. So, since we started up the official subreddit, which is cynicalbritofficial.reddit.com, we wanted to do some more regular Q&A stuff, kind of like a regular weekly or bi-weekly, well, fortnightly, not bi-weekly, Q&A or AMA, whatever you want to call it. So, I took some questions from the subreddit. There's like 200 of them. I posted the thread about 2 hours ago, and now there's 200 of them. So we probably won't get through all of them. I'm going to post them on the first-come, first-served basis. So we're going to start with the people that posted first and get as many done as possible until my voice goes out or I get tired or have to go do something else. So that's the plan for that. You'll be able to see the questions on the right-hand side of the screen right there. I'll highlight them as I scroll through the thread. And we'll do the best that we can to answer as many as possible. A lot of stuff to go through. So, I'm not going to waste any more time. Let us begin. I imagine most of these are going to be gaming related. Some of them will not. The only rules that I had were no health related questions and no precise income related questions. No, I'm not going to tell you how much money I make. Okay. A bit closer to the microphone so I don't have to strain my voice today. Was at weirdly enough, a 4th of July party yesterday, which I suppose was the 3rd of July, but you get the idea. You know, I've spent the last 3 or so years not really being involved in anything in the neighborhood because we were renting the house, and now we're going to be closing on the house in a couple of weeks, so we're going to be buying it. So we finally know, hey, we're living here. So it's like, I should probably get to know the neighbors instead of sitting in my office all day. So we went to a 4th of July party and met some very nice people, although it was a little bit weird. It's like, I had a coaster that said, happy 1776, and I was like, we weren't that happy in 1776, actually. But never mind. Alright, let's begin. In order. This one from the Arkham Knight 111. Hello, Total Biscuit. What is your favorite video game expansion? I think the one that comes to mind is probably Shimmering Isles. This is, weirdly enough, going to be an answer to a question later down the line, which is single best piece of DLC. It's kind of the same thing, because you've got to ask whether or not it's a piece of DLC or an expansion pack, and whether or not there's really a difference in that these days, and I don't think there really is. I think most of it's down to the size of the piece of content and the price of it. Some people treat DLC as separate to expansion packs, whereas really DLC can also be an expansion pack. It just depends on the size and the scope of it. Shimmering Isles was... Shivering Isles, not Shimmering Isles. What the hell am I talking about? Shivering Isles is phenomenally good. The overall antagonist of it was hilarious. The number of completely bizarre situations that you could get yourself involved in was awesome. The sort of faction clash that was going on that island was amazing too. I think that piece of content was probably better than the main game. So Shivering Isles was excellent. I'm trying to think what other... You know, there aren't a huge number of expansion packs, but I would say that XCOM Enemy Within is a good recent example of the last few years of a great expansion pack. It not only added a ton of extra complexity to the game, but it also added a ton of extra options. Now, they could have released that expansion with, say, just the Met class or just the gene modding, and they decided to go with both, plus an additional enemy type and different events that completely screwed over things. And by enemy type, I don't just mean, oh, an extra unit. I'm talking about, no, they added a whole different faction to it, which would screw with what you were doing. So, yeah, and it set it up quite nicely for XCOM 2 as well. So I think that's a really good example of a modern expansion pack. This one from Dude's Opinion. If you could choose people from any development team around the world to make your dream game, who would you pick and what would that game be? I don't know. I don't think that I really have a dream game at this point. I've never really thought about that, although there is one thing that I would really love to see, which is a title which was kind of like... Was it called Ascendancy? Ascension? The hell was the name of that? There was a old game on Microsoft The Zone, which was a multiplayer space fighter game with a degree of persistence, and it had multi-crewed ships. It had a sort of resource management strategy layer to it. Was it called Ascendancy? It may very well have been. I'd love to see something like that mixed in with something like Cosmic Rift, which was a really old title that Sony used to run, which was like a top-down space game, and they had a bunch of different modes for it. It was, I think, something of a spiritual successor to what's now called Continuum, which used to be called Subspace, which was, again, a top-down multiplayer space shooter. And the mode that I played in Cosmic Rift had a bunch of things like mining, it had piracy in it, there were multi-crew ships and all sorts of things like that. You know, what I would love to see is somebody make a game like that, update it sort of for the modern era. I really hope that that's what Dead Star would be, but it doesn't have the layer of complexity. It's got a little bit of it, you know, you mine resources and you bring them back to upgrade your base, but it's not quite what I was looking for. I was looking for a multi-role kind of game where you could have people that were dedicated miners, people that were dedicated pirates, people that were dedicated police and soldiers and all that sort of thing, and of course multi-crew vessels that you get a few different people in. I remember rolling around in a ship where I think I was the pilot and I had two guys that were on the turrets, and that was really, really fun to do. I'd love to see that brought up to date. As to who would make it, tricky one. I mean, probably like the old Cosmic Rift team, and maybe like throw in some of the PlanetSide team there for good measure, because I think they sort of understand large-scale combat fairly well. They'd probably do a reasonably good job of it. Alright, let's move on. Blue Sapphire says, have you ever been to or had any interest in going to a board game convention like Gen Con or BBG Con? What is BBG Con? I don't know what BBG Con actually is. Board Game Geek. Well, that's not Board Game Geek. That would be BGG, but anyway, Gen Con, obviously, I know what that is. I'd love to go. It's not part of the job, really, so it would be more for my own personal interest than anything else, and it can be difficult to justify traveling for that reason. So I think that as much as I would love to go, I would end up being very tempted to cover it in some way, and I'm not a board game coverage channel, even though I have had aspirations to do board game content at some point beyond the lounge. So I'd love to go. It's just getting the time to do it and sort of justifying several days away from home in order to do that. Moving on to TCHW's question. What do you think is the best single-player DLC for any game, regardless of the platform it's on? It's the same kind of answer to the expansion question, really, because there's no real difference between DLC and expansion anymore. It really just comes down to scope, scale, and price. I think a lot of people associate DLC with horse armor, and DLC has a very bad reputation, but DLC can be of any size, and of course any price and scope. So, again, I think Shivering Isles and probably Enemy Within are the best in recent memory, at any rate. What do you think is your best video? Tricky one. I mean, there's a lot of videos that I'm happy with. I think that most of my I will talk about something for Y minutes videos are pretty good, for the most part. I think that they genuinely inspire decent positive discussion most of the time. I was pretty happy with how I handled the Dragon Cancer Let's Play situation. I thought that was very balanced and calmed the situation down a lot, and that's really what I was aiming to do there. I think over the past few years, I've become less willing to stoke the flames, as it were, because I don't really see the purpose of that. I don't like where it leads more often than not. I like to try and look at things from as many perspectives as possible, and even if a company does something that's blatantly crappy, I at least like to explain why they did it. You know, maybe try and figure out what their logic is, and there's something that I think a lot of people have lost sight of on the internet, and that's the benefit of the doubt. Giving somebody that has an opinion the benefit of the doubt and saying, well, okay, your opinion might be really weird to me, maybe it's offensive to me, maybe I think it's an awful opinion, but I want to understand why you hold that, not just condemn you for it. And that's a good way to approach politics, I feel. It's not to demonize the opposition. It's to try and figure out, you know, why do you believe that? Because the chances are they believe it for a reason they think is right. It's not that they're evil people. They just think that this particular way to go is the right way to go. And they probably have pretty good reasons, at least from their perspective anyway, to justify that. And to a lesser extent, that there's so little of that I think happens in video game discussion. There's so many people that will turn around and say, oh, well, you know, I don't like this game, so you suck for liking it. or something along the lines of, I don't understand this, so I'm going to say everyone involved in it is dumb. There was this thread earlier, I think encapsulated, this has probably been deleted now, was just some idiot posting it, but you see so many of these things come along, where someone's like, streaming ruined video games, and then a couple of paragraphs which don't even justify the opinion at all, which basically boil down to, I don't understand this, so I think it's evil and should go away. And I think that we need a lot less of that, and I think that if I can encourage less people to act that way through a video like that, then that's a good thing. So I'm pretty happy with that. Stuff like that. Alright, which moment in gaming would you say had the strongest experience for you? That's from Leka34. Emotionally, or just, holy crap, that was awesome. Well, I've got two examples for that. Emotionally, it would be Brothers Tale of the Two Sons, probably the only game I've ever cried after. And the second game that has the sort of, holy fuck, this is awesome aspect, would be Asura's Wrath. I mean, that's a game where you punch somebody the size of a planet. It's ridiculous. I think it's probably it's about experiencing the extreme silliness that video games can go to. And I think that Asura's Wrath is a great example of that. And as for Brothers, you know, I was very engaged in that. It was an emotional connection that was made not through the story, but through the mechanics. Actually, is that true? I mean, I think it was both. You know, that was the thing, that there was this integration of mechanics and story and narrative that was very unique and hasn't really happened in too many other games. And it was down to even like the very control method. To talk about it would be to spoil it for those who haven't played it, which would be a real shame. But when you're able to integrate the controls and the interface of the game with the narrative, then you've created something very special, which is what Brothers did. So yeah, I was I was very affected by that one. Alright, so from Arella, man, if you were to learn to speedrun any game, which would it be and why? Probably Deus Ex, because it's my personal favorite. I can't think of anything else that I'd really like to speedrun. I like watching speedrunning, but I've never had any desire to do it myself. So, there you go. This one sort of cancelled out because someone asked, hey, you know, what's your opinion on Total War Warhammer? Then realized, oh yeah, it's a Sega published title, so yeah, I don't actually have an opinion on that. Because it's boycotted, because Sega is silly. What is your favorite vacation destination? Asks Ain't Fooling Anyone. That's Las Vegas, actually. We go to Las Vegas on a reasonably regular basis for, if you can say that, you know. We maybe go a couple of times a year, and there's always something new to do there. It's fun. I relax a lot in Vegas. Got a ton of great restaurants. I don't gamble very much, but there's always a ton of shows and different things to see, and it's generally, at least in my eyes, a very chilled out place. You know, I don't actually go for the party atmosphere, I go to relax, which sounds weird, I guess, but I'm able to disconnect in Vegas for some reason. Don't really know why that is. Are there any speedruns you're looking forward to at the Games Done Quick event this week? No, actually, honestly, I don't really keep track of what games are going to be speedrun. I just tune in when I have the time. So I did watch a bunch of the Demon's Souls speedrun yesterday, which I found to be very interesting, but I don't specifically look for games on the list. I just tune in and see what happens. Rag33 asks, have you ever thought about returning to Dota? I mean, I always think about returning to Dota. It's what I would do with that content, or if I would do content on it, because I found myself in a situation where I don't really want to do Overwatch content, because I'm enjoying that game as something that's very much a relaxation technique for me. It's a disconnection from all of the other stuff that I do. And whenever you turn that into content, it becomes work. And there are various expectations. You start to worry a lot more about your performance in the game. You start to stress out about having a bad game because you're like, well, that could have been content if I hadn't screwed that up, or if my team didn't screw it up for me. You start to get angry at your teammates. Now, you find that when I streamed Overwatch, I get much saltier at my teammates when I'm streaming than when I'm just playing solo, because really the results when I'm playing solo don't matter, because no one's looking. Nobody cares. So if we lose because our team sucks, it doesn't really bother me. I actually like solo queue in Overwatch. I know a lot of people say, oh, solo queue's awful. Actually, no, I don't find it very stressful at all. Because I just take this attitude where I played to the best of my ability, and whether I win or lost doesn't really matter, because I played as well as I personally could have, and I tried to get better. But as soon as you try and do that on stream, where you've got a bunch of people sort of analyzing your play and criticizing your play, it becomes much more stressful, because then you start to blame your team because your play wasn't very good or whatever, and there's kind of a legitimate reason for that, because if the team plays badly, then the viewing experience for the viewer is actually worse, because you're not executing those great plays, you're dying too much because everyone else is dying, your healer's not keeping you alive, you end up in the middle of nowhere, and some of that's your fault, but some of that's your team's fault. Dota's a very team-orientated game, and as much as I love Dota, if I went back to it, I'm not sure I'd create content on it anymore. I am really thinking that I might just play it for myself, honestly. Although, I have been considering doing something with Pyrion. We had discussed this idea of a series called Laning and Complaining, which would just be the two of us just being grumpy playing Dota. That'll be it. You know, I'd edit it a bit to get rid of some of the downtime, but would mostly be being British and grumpy. Thought about that might be a good idea, because at least when I last played, I was actually around the same MMR as Pyrion. I probably am not now, because I haven't played in about 9 months, but if I were to practice again, I'd love to do that series. It's just, again, I've got so many series on, you know, it's very difficult to keep up with that stuff. Alright. This is a long one from Watch. I don't know what that name is. You play a lot of games every week. What is the frequency where you encounter something good and different in terms of immersion mechanics and kinesthetic pleasure? That's a nice word. Think Mountain Blade pioneering medieval realistic combat, Thomas was alone, minimalist, empathy creating narrative, or Finger Belay that is Mirror's Edge. Somebody thought this one through. It's not often, honestly, like, because I've played so many games, it takes quite a lot to really surprise me so much that I would get so immersed in a game as to continue to play it a lot. A lot of games that I play, I just play for work. I was like, well, played enough to figure out what this is. Here's my opinion. Here's kind of what it is, and now I'm going to move on. That's what a lot of that ends up being. Which in itself is a little bit of a shame. You know, there's the occasional game like Darkest Dungeon that afterwards I'll still play for pleasure. There's a game like, say, Renowned Explorers that after I'm done I'll play for pleasure, or FTL. There aren't many of them, though. Yeah. I only have really a couple of games that I play for pleasure after the fact. Doom's another one. You know, I think Doom was just sheer unbridled joy. I even got into the multiplayer a bit after the video itself. But I often just sort of stop playing the game and move on to the next one. You know, that's kind of what happens when most of your games are free. You don't really value them as much. So you don't feel the need to finish them. It's just like, well, alright, I've had my fill, so here we go. Alright, moving on to Pencil Wings question. Do you think you can group eras of games in a similar manner historians have named art movements? I mean, you already do, right? Like, you've got the 8-bit era, you've got the 16-bit era, you've got the, you know, rise of the 3D era. And of course, you've got what could be considered the VR era right now. I think those already exist, honestly, but they're not really valuable terms. Because really you can just describe it as the console generation that it was on, or the technology that was currently in place on PC, or whatever the handheld generation was. I don't think you need a special fancy name for it. But I think that those already exist for the most part. Captain Morgan asks, is there a game franchise that has not been remade or rebooted that you'd love to have a current-gen remake of? I think there's definitely some PS1 and PS2 era games, or of course Sega Saturn era, N64 era games that could really do with a new coat of paint. It's why it's pretty cool that they're doing a remaster of Crash Bandicoot, because that game looks pretty old now. You know, most of the older 3D games could really use a coat of paint. And there's plenty of PC games as well. You know, I'd love to see a real HD remaster and UI overhaul of something like Master of Magic, for instance. Or the old Magic the Gathering Jewels of the Planeswalker game. I'm not talking about the current one, I'm talking about the really old one, which was actually sort of an exploration-based RPG with card collecting. I'd love to see the Pokemon TCG that was on Game Boy Color remastered. That game was kick-ass. There's all sorts of things. You know, and the thing is that what we're getting remastered now is stuff that really doesn't need to be remastered at all. It's like, do you really need to remaster God of War? Do you need to remaster The Last of Us? I mean, it was helpful because that game ran at 30 FPS, so it was great to play it at 60. I thought the game was a hell of a lot better, and I enjoyed it much more with the remaster. But I'm just like, wow, why don't you just, could you just dive back into the history of these early 3D games and really redo those? Or DOS strategy games, for instance. There were so many really good DOS RPGs and DOS strategy games that the UI was basically made by aliens. It was made 20 years ago. It's totally out of date. There's some modern touches that could be made without compromising it. I love the fact that System Shock is being remastered, because that game hasn't aged well. But the actual content, if you were to redo the visuals and the controls and the mechanics, is awesome, So I'm glad that they're doing that. But yeah, so plenty of stuff. Dual Calamity asks, have you ever tried using cheat software like Cheat Engine before in a game, especially for games with resources, to see what the end game is like? I haven't, mostly because it's difficult to rely on that software to not screw with something else. There are some games, it's quite rare now, but there are some games where a developer will literally provide you with a skip level cheat or something along those lines. That can be, there's fireworks, that can be quite useful for review and critique purposes, because it lets you skip a part that you're stuck on or whatever in order to see more of the game. The problem is that unofficial stuff like Cheat Engine could potentially screw with all sorts of different aspects of the game. Perhaps way, way more than I'm comfortable with. And if I end up critiquing a game that I've used like Cheat Engine on and it's screwed with something else, and I give false information as a result of that, I think that would be a big disservice, not only to the game but to the viewers. It would not be professional, so that's why I don't use that. I have no problem with people cheating in single-player games, by the way. I think achievements are absolute rubbish. They're completely pointless. And honestly, most games disable that anyway if you screw around with cheats. So, I'd be totally fine with cheating in a single-player game. Not fine with cheating in a multiplayer game, of course, but if it's just you, who cares? Alright. Geeks Ramble asks, what do you think we as consumers can do to make the games industry better? Temper your hype and stop pre-ordering video games. That's what I would say. Both of these things are feeding into dishonesty from developers and feeding into a willingness to cut off pieces of content so that you have to basically take a risk and pre-order a game in order to get it. And that's not healthy for anybody. I don't think there should be a system whereby if you choose to take the sensible option, you get punished. That isn't good. And unfortunately, the fact that people keep pre-ordering video games is why this keeps happening. Alright, Nibbling asks, you've had Danny O'Dwyer on the podcast twice, and both times he's been an amazing guest. Have you reached out to any of the Giant Bomb crew at any point to be a guest? Part of me feels like Dan Rickett would be amazing. Basically, the door's always open for any of them that want to come on the show, but none of them have ever really expressed any interest in it. So, sometimes I'll approach people and ask them to be on the show, sometimes I won't. I think when you're dealing with an organization like that produces basically competing content to you, it's best to just leave the door open and see if they're interested, rather than pester them. Thoughts on Brexit? Not answering that question. Go away. Stop asking it. Scottish Husky says, aside from Clash Royale, is there any other mobile game that you're currently into and recommend? No, there isn't. Simple as that. I tried a bunch of mobile games, most of them end up sucking and being giant cash vampires. Clash Royale is a cash vampire, but it doesn't suck, so, there is that. And of course, the March of the Clones, Attack of the Clones coming in right now with Clash Royale. There's something called Jungle Strike, which is almost a clone of that. There's a bunch of other games that do it as well. Mobile games mostly are terrible. They really are. Clash Royale is literally the only one I play right now. I'm not answering that because that's stupid. What deck are you using in Clash Royale? You can check it out if you go to my profile, but currently it is, let's see if I can remember this off the top of my head without having to actually look at my phone. Let's see, Arrows, Barbarian, Ice Wizard, Sparky, Balloon, Giant, Minions, and Musketeer. That's what I'm currently using. It's a fairly aggressive counter deck that trades tower for tower. If a player overcommits to one lane, I'll generally use an Ice Wizard to slow down their progress, and then I'll hit the other lane with a big siege unit like a Balloon or a Giant. I'll also use Sparkies behind the lines of Giants, because they're very difficult to deal with. And I'll use things like Arrows Arrows basically are solely to deal with Princess, Minions, and Minion Horde. Or a large horde of Goblins, if they happen to go for that. And I use minions usually to counter big ground units. Yeah, that's what I run with. It works really well. I mean, I play in legendary level arena, so it seems to work all right. All right. Have I managed to find a good curry in the States since then? A couple of local places do some decent stuff. It's not as good as the stuff in the UK, but it's not bad. Obviously, it can be difficult if you don't have genuine Indian immigrants making it. You know, if someone who's not Indian tries to make it, it generally doesn't work out so well. There's a lot of really oily curries in this country. Not a huge fan of them, but I did find a couple of places that weren't so bad. That and, you know, if you don't have a good keema naan, then I'm not interested. I don't want none if you ain't got no keema naan, son. Alright. Second call says, which movie series had a plot that you didn't at all anticipate? Plot twist that you didn't at all anticipate in a movie or series? How to Get Away with Murder has tons of them. that series gets crazier and crazier all the time. And it's really interesting the way they do it, because they spoil the plot at the start of the season, but they do it in a way that's deliberately deceptive. They only show parts of it, so you end up being misled into believing that something went down one way, and then they end up showing a little bit more that shows that the situation was totally different. So, yeah, I think that series stands out in my mind as having a bunch of really unbelievable plot twists that I don't expect. Fan asks, any new content planned with Jenna? Yeah, absolutely. It's down to time. It's down to when I have time, when Jenna has time, when we have something that we want to do together. You know, there's definitely stuff that I've wanted to do that she hasn't been so interested in, then there's been stuff that she's wanted to do that I haven't been so interested in, so yeah, it's really about finding the right thing, honestly. It'll definitely happen, though. Yeah, so, totally. Jetpacks asks, will we get co-optional with Jim Sterling? You've already had 3 of them? So, I mean, at some point, sure, but, you know, I like to try and rotate out guests so that there's a decent gap between returning guests, and, you know, always having new guests on generally keeps the show fresh, so, yeah, you know, he's always welcome back. I'm just not guaranteeing it anytime in the near future. Zynos asks, what current TV shows do you watch right now? Well, How to Get Away with Murder, although I just finished the season of that. Game of Thrones, just finished the season of that. Archer, new season is on Hulu right now, so I'm watching that. I watch WWE NXT. I usually watch SmackDown, but I don't watch Raw that much these days because it's not very good. And SmackDown is a nicer format, I feel. Generally better quality content. Anime-wise, I'm currently watching Claymore and Terraform Mars. So, and I'm looking at watching Ergo Proxy. That looks kind of interesting. Those are the current shows that I watch at the moment. Razor asks exactly the same question, so there you go. Cracknotes, about 10 months ago, you said you wanted to invite Sergey Golyukin from Steam Spy on the podcast. He told this in his podcast. He agreed to the invitation. It never happened. He still plans to invite him. I want to do a show with him at some point. It wouldn't be the co-optional podcast. It would be more of a focused show on Steam analytics and sales and, you know, the overall environment, I think, of how to, you know, how a game's being so successful on Steam and how, of course, a game's failing in an environment when there are so many games. So there's just an absolute flood of games. I wouldn't bring him on co-optional, I don't think I ever invited him to co-optional. I thought I said I wanted to do an individual one-off show with him and a couple of other people from analytics sites. I just haven't got around to it. I feel like I will at some point. Alright. Bacon Steak Gun. In terms of overall video presentation, what advice do you offer to someone who wants to make high-quality content but's never done so before? I've got a high-quality mic and interesting topics to talk about, but vocally I do not sound nearly as robust or sophisticated as you do. Practice makes perfect. Do it over and over and over again. Everybody sounds like crap when they start. And don't be afraid to do a retake. If you flub a line, don't just leave it in. Redo it. You know, quite a lot of my stuff is not scripted, but it is done in a way where I can do a retake if I screw up a line. The live stuff, obviously that doesn't happen with, but there are plenty of formats that I do where I can retake a line, and that helps make it sound more confident and more sophisticated or whatever, but practice, 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 practice. There's no hidden secret to it. Just keep doing it until you get better at it. Don't know what salida means. It's probably some kind of vegetable. You are often asked how to make it on YouTube and stuff like that and advise people not to and said there's no recipe for guaranteed success. My question would be if you could give some general tips on how to make a video presentable and pleasing to watch. I want to review music. Oh dear, reviewing music on YouTube, that's really hard because you get copyright striked all the time. So that can be difficult. You might want to write about that or do a podcast. I would not recommend doing music reviews on YouTube. That is a fine way to get automated copyright strikes. Presentation-wise, though, and for music reviews, because, you know, for video games, it's just like, show a good chunk of the gameplay, don't be unbelievably awful at the game, record it in high quality, and make sure you don't misrepresent anything. I think that for a music review, though, I couldn't give you any advice. I'm sorry, that's beyond my scope. MSInfo738 asks, with the creation of the subreddit, has it lived up to expectations? Yeah, pretty much. You know, it's working out pretty well. Happy with the positivity. There's a much less negative vibe. You know, we had to ban some people from the unofficial subreddit who we knew we didn't want here, but that helped, you know. I think people have this idea that I'm very, very anti-censorship and I'm very, very pro-free speech, and that's actually not true and never has been. I grew up in Britain, where we don't actually have full free speech, and, you know, for the longest time I was kind of okay with that, and I kind of still am okay with it. I'm okay with potentially prosecuting hate speech, because we do that in Britain, and it's just a thing we accept. Everyone grew up with different things that they were used to, but honestly, there is a huge difference between turning off your comments or creating your own private place and moderating it how you please, and widespread censorship across like something like a big social media platform like Reddit in general, you know, in some of the big default subreddits, what are basically official subreddits, and social media like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You know, there's a huge difference between those two things. So, obviously, I don't think that widespread censorship on those platforms is good, but I simultaneously don't think you should be able to say any horribly shitty thing you want, especially when it can lead to harm to other people, and I mean real harm. It's like, you're not allowed to go and say, hey, go and swat this person. It's like, well, freedom of speech. Fuck your freedom of speech. You just used it as a weapon. You know, in that case, I do not support it whatsoever. So, you know, some people got this idea about it because of, I guess, because of the whole Gamergate thing, where I didn't completely dismiss it as a hate movement, because it isn't. But they got the idea. It's like, well, you must stand for all of these things. Well, no, I don't. Fuck your ideologies. I don't subscribe to your tribe. I have no interest in any of that. You know, whatever my opinions are, whatever my viewpoints are, they're things that I thought out myself, and if you don't agree with them, well, okay. I never asked to be part of your tribe to begin with. Alright, moving on. Does the Steam Summer Sale make a noticeable spike in view counts of your old videos? That's from ANW. It can. Noticeably, not anymore, really, because it used to do that with flash sales. You know, when I do the daily deals videos, it did have a bit of an impact. We still get higher searches, and we get a bit of a spike in views for older videos, because people are looking for info on stuff that's on sale, but it's not as much anymore. Hamian asks, what game or genre do you wish there would be a resurgence in? Well, RTS, you know. There doesn't seem to be a huge amount of interest in it, even though people say, oh, I want a new RTS, where did our Command & Conquers go? And then someone releases a game, it's like, we have a new RTS, and then nobody bloody plays it. So, okay. You know, that's not exactly supported by the sales figures, is it? You know, which is a bit sad. How do you feel about the gambling situation in CSGO? Oh dear, do I want to touch this with 10-foot barge pole? Okay. Two things. One. How should I best say this? If you don't disclose sponsored deals, you are breaking the law. And you are lying to your subscribers. This makes you a scumbag. I've been saying this for years, my attitude has not changed. People still do it anyway, and they still are scumbags. And I dearly hope that the FTC comes down on them like a ton of bricks. As for the actual gambling situation, It's a tricky one. The issue with CSGO gambling is that, technically speaking, the stuff that you sell is for Steam wallet credit only, not real money. The problem is, there are third-party services which allow you to cash out, basically, with a pretty hefty cut, but they are services which allow you to sell those items third-party and basically cash out for real money, or trade out Steam wallet currency for real currency. You know, basically by buying items and with your Steam wallet currency and using that as a trading mechanism. And that means that CSGO gambling is basically a real thing. You're not actually gambling for virtual items that have no inherent value. They clearly do have inherent value, and there's an entire underground economy based on that inherent value. That means that it needs some degree of regulation. Now, I come from a country where gambling is very common. It's nowhere near as restricted as it is in the United States. You know, there are bookies on every corner. There are amusements on every corner. As long as you're 18 years old, you can go and gamble away to your heart's content. And I think that people should have the freedom to do that. Simultaneously, I recognize that gambling can be very destructive. And the main problem is that online gambling with stuff like CSGO items has no regulation and can be done by children. There's nothing stopping them. Nothing stopping them. And that's where the problems lie. And I'm going to be frank. If your main demographic is children, and I know a bunch of people on both Twitch and YouTube, your main demographic is children, if you are promoting a gambling service that they can use, I think that you have some serious moral bankruptcy issues going on. Not happy with that at all. I think it's a really scummy thing to do. Alright, next question. See for yourself says, hi TB, recently a thread opened about Dota 2. Could you give your insights if we ever see you come back? We've already answered that question. Barco, you recently reaffirmed that Brothers of Tale 2 Sons your favorite game of all time. After your top 10 list in 2015, I thought Undertale took that place. That's not how the top 10s work. At all. Not at all. Undertale is not my favorite game of all time. It's probably not even in my top 10, but it was great. That year, you know? It was probably the best game that year. That doesn't mean that it replaces favorite games of all time. You know, Deus Ex is still my second favorite game of all time. So, it's like, well, Undertale must have replaced it, because that was not what... Here's the thing. Right, just a pro tip, the top 10s don't mean a damn thing. They're arbitrary pieces of end-of-year content that lots of people watch. They don't mean a fucking thing. Like, the list is arbitrary. You know, it barely matters what order it's in. It's just like, here's 10 games I really enjoyed this year, and I'm going to talk about why. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's politics. I'd rather not talk about that. What is the name of the MMO I've been playing? Riders of Icarus is the name of the MMO I've been playing. No, I'm not going to tell you the server, and I'm not going to tell you the character name. And so far, it's been alright. You know, it's definitely got its issues. Combat's a bit clunky, but it has its moments. It's got some interesting little mechanics, like the fact that you can tame almost every creature in the world and ride it. That's neat. And you can also give it gear, and it has various skills and stats, which I thought was pretty awesome. Kind of enjoy that aspect of it. And there's a couple of things about the combat which are pretty good. I'm playing an assassin, and the combat is very based on dodging around and then following up with a move, because every time you use a move, at least most of them, after a dodge, it gains a special property, which I find is kind of interesting. So you dodge in, you dodge out, you dodge some attacks, you can sort of throw knives, which will send you airborne. There's airborne attacks that you can do, like mid-air, I can hook myself back in and hit the enemy, and that feels pretty good, and they've got some good sound assets and animations too, so that's pretty cool. I enjoy that. I'm probably not doing a video on it. I'm just playing it for my own personal amusement right now. Which games among WTFs have most strongly defied your expectations? From expecting something bad to finding something good and vice versa. That's from Cav2K. That's a difficult question. Because I've done hundreds of videos, and remembering that far back is a little bit difficult. Let me think. I'm actually going to have to go to my YouTube channel and look to remind myself. I don't have a particularly good memory, as people are probably well aware, so... Let's see. And recently it was probably Chronicles RuneScape Legends, because I didn't expect that game to be any good at all, and that was a pleasant surprise. I was disappointed definitely by Into the Stars. I was very interested in Into the Stars, and it ended up just being very disappointing, very lackluster. So that was a shame. Not really sure elsewhere. All this has told me is that I haven't done anywhere near enough WTF over the past few months. Jesus, God, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 since March? Jesus Christ. That's like less than 4 a month. I need to really sort that out. Yeah, I can't think of like a great example from way far back though. You know, obviously there are some games which I absolutely gush over, and I think that any of those really counts. But I can't think of too many examples of that lately. Nothing really springs to mind too much. All this has indicated is that I really need to make more of those videos. Alright. Next one. Okay. If Half-Life 3 ever came out and you did WTF's video on it, would it become your highest viewed video ever? Probably. It would, no, it wouldn't. Because that's most likely always going to be League of Legends. Because it's such a big damn game. I'm sure it would be a very popular video. Which is why I wish they'd bring it out so I can make some money off the back of it. How much of the original Mirror's Edge did you play? Probably about 6 hours of it. It was pretty good. It wasn't a massive fan of it because I'm not really a fan of platforming per se, but I thought that what it did was pretty interesting. I haven't played the new one yet because I tried the new one prior to launch and it had major performance issues. I haven't gone back since. CSGO Fiasco, I just talked about that. Dota videos, I just talked about that. Do you think execution or originality is more important? I don't think there is... I don't think there's a situation where you could say one's more important than the other, really. It depends on the game. There are certainly times where if you've got really slick mechanics and really slick execution, I'll say, yeah, this game's great. And then there are other times where it's a case of, oh, well, you know, we're really original, but what we did didn't really pan out. We didn't execute the mechanics very well. Our design philosophy didn't make a lot of sense. So it varies from game to game, genre to genre, honestly. I think if I particularly like a genre, then a really well executed but not that original entry to that genre will probably keep me interested. If I'm getting sick of a genre, then I'm looking for originality. So I think that that's the tipping point there. I'll take a quick break so I can rest my voice a little bit because I'm getting a little bit croaky here. So give me a few minutes and I'll be right back with more questions here on the July Q&A. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Q&A stream. Do a little bit more, probably it's another sort of 45 minutes or so. We'll do about an hour and a half, because I don't think my voice can take any more than that, but hey. Okay, onward and onward and onward we go. As I said, we will not get anywhere near all of these done today. It's just not possible. You know, we had 250 questions before the show even started, so, you know, it happens. Any chance we'll see Day 9 of the podcast? Sure, it's always a possibility of it. He's a very busy man, though. I don't think you fully understand just how busy that guy is. Yep, I'd have no problem with that on the show, though. That would be absolutely fine. Nintendo Addict asks, of all the conventions you've attended in your career, which would you say was your favorite? am I allowed to say anything other than CoxCon? I don't think I'm allowed to say anything other than CoxCon at this point, but MomoCon was fun. I enjoyed that. It was a very relaxed convention. PAX, I always find very fulfilling. Basically anything that's not E3. Oh dear. Next one. Have you thought of bringing the Continue guys back on the podcast? Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's again always fine. I think I'm gonna skip all of the questions that are like this now, mostly because it's gonna be the same answer. It's like, unless I hated their guts, which I'm not gonna publicly say, then sure, why not? Is the answer to all of these questions. Belly Button Laserbeam asks, favorite Iron Maiden album? Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, probably. Somewhere in Time. The title track's not very good. It's got some... Isn't Somewhere in Time the one that had the Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner on it? Let me just double check that, because that was a silly song. Somewhere in Time. What's the list on that one? Somewhere in Time album. Let's see. What was on that album? I'm trying to remember now. Oh, God, yes. Let's see. Caught Somewhere in Time was not a good title track. Wasted Years was pretty decent. Sea of Madness I quite liked. Heaven Could Wait was fairly catchy. Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner was just... It was the second side of it that went crazy, because it was literally Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. Stranger in a Strange Land is pretty good because of that riff, and that bass is amazing. Deja Vu sucked, and Alexander the Great was just pretentious wankery. So, like, half of that album's alright. Whereas Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, I don't think there's a bad track on that album. I also really like Brave New World, by the way. I thought Brave New World was a phenomenal album. Stop calling me this, it's annoying. Do you ever stress over how many games you want or need to play? If so, how do you deal with it? Medication and sleeping, probably. Yeah, there's way too many games. I wanna cover as many as possible. I wanna be as useful as possible, and I would love to make sure that I'm giving good developers the time of day, but I'm only one person, and that's really, really hard to do, especially when I've got a bunch of other stuff on my plate. So yeah, I stress and obsess over it all the time. It's pretty much the nature of my personality. What is your favorite fighting game, asks Jason Geo. I mean, Street Fighter 4 probably in terms of recent games, but I gotta say Marvel Superheroes on the Saturn was an absolutely phenomenal fighting game. There's the one with the gem system in it. I loved that. And of course, you can count Power Stone, if you count that as a fighting game, which I sort of do. Not a 2D fighter, certainly, but Power Stone desperately needs a remaster, a rework, or a bloody sequel. That game was brilliant. It's a Dota question, I've already kind of asked that. Seeing as you hate flying, would you consider a cruise to Australia? How bloody long would that take? Also, do they even do that? Because I'm not 100% sure they do, and even, let's find out. Can you have cruise to Australia from America? Can you do it? Cruises from United States to Australia. 25-day cruise. 19-night cruise. Looks like the fastest you can do is 17-night cruise to Australia. Do I really want to spend half a month traveling to a country, or in the cases of many of them, almost an entire month? No, I don't think so. Plus, God knows what would happen with the oceans and shit like that. Like, you know, that's deep, you know, that's deep ocean stuff. Like, that's in the middle of a huge ocean with storms and, you know, rocking the boat in a crazy way. You know, whereas the cruises I go on, which are like 3 to 4 day cruises in relatively calm seas, don't really have that problem. I don't think I would cruise to Australia. It's also like, I assume that's one way as well. It takes 25 fucking days to get there. Although you do visit San Diego, Honolulu, a bunch of places in Hawaii, actually. Tahiti, Bora Bora, Auckland in New Zealand, and the Bay of Islands in New Zealand. Huh. That must be really expensive. Good lord. That would be crazy. Alright, how many games do you actually have time to finish these days? 0! Unless the games are really short, none of them. I haven't even finished frickin' Doom yet. I almost have, but I just haven't had the time. I don't finish games. I don't have the time to finish games. What do you think about Roman Reigns' suspension? What is there to think? He's a moron. He took drugs and got suspended under the wellness policy. I hope it kills his push, because he deserves to be punished for that. He's supposed to be the top guy, the face of the company, and the guy that they're pushing towards kids, and he took drugs of some sort. So, yeah, he deserves every punishment that comes his way. I hope he loses forever. In the light of your appreciation for Undertale, have you played other cult classic RPGs like Earthbound and Release of the Painful? Nope. Haven't touched them. Nor do I have any interest in them, I'm afraid. I don't play a huge amount of classic RPGs. I actually do like RPGs. I don't know why people have recently been saying that I don't. That's bullshit. I love RPGs, but I don't usually have the time to play a lot of them. And the RPGs that I like to play are either CRPGs, you know, kind of in the Baldur's Gate style, the Wasteland 2 sort of style, or the more modern action RPG. I don't really like playing older style RPGs, which, you know, things like Earthbound are very much. If you go back and change one thing about your career, what would it be? Would I? I can always look back and say, well, oh, if only I jumped on the bandwagon of this game quicker. But then I realized, while I would have made a bunch of money off it, I probably wouldn't have been happy. I should have jumped on Minecraft sooner than I did. Might have been good for money, but would it have been good for me? Probably not. I think the only thing I would have changed is to maybe start making videos sooner than I did, honestly. Oh dear. Any advice for a games writer for an online magazine who's trying to not be sensationalist? Well, one, don't be sensationalist, and two, get a Patreon, because if you're not sensationalist, you ain't going to make any bloody money doing this. Games writing is on the way out, and the majority of sites that are still in business are gigantic and resort to clickbait and ridiculous bullshit to stay afloat. Alright. Next one. MaxiTB. A person that have huge issues if a game doesn't handle well, specifically the UI. Now, a lot of modern games have very clunky UI when it comes to the PC mouse experience, mostly due to sharing the same UI with consoles. For example, the clicks per action ratio is sometimes like 4 times what it should be with inventory management and so on and so forth. So my question is, am I the only one annoyed by this? No, you're not the only one annoyed by this. Of course you're not the only one annoyed by this. Almost everybody on PC is. It's just people have different levels of tolerance to it. Frankly, I think that if you're releasing multi-platform and you're supporting keyboard and mouse, you should do it well, and you should redesign things like your menu and inventory UI to properly support the platform you're on. If you don't do that, it's a shoddy port. Which alien race in Star Trek do you find the most compelling and why? I think the Cardassians actually really interesting, because there's this idea that's like the Cardassians are the bad guys, but in DS9, they're kind of not. Like, they have an understandable reason for acting the way that they are, because their planet is very much out of resources. Their economy is shattered, and they allied with the Dominion kind of out of necessity, more so than anything else, and a lot of the Cardassians weren't happy with that. So I found them to be a very interesting multi-layered race, instead of just a straight-up, we're the bad guys, woo, we're the antagonists. Klingons are interesting as well. I mean, there's a lot of interesting races in that. I think the Romulans are very intriguing, and they haven't spent anywhere near enough time sort of investigating that. You got to read the books if you want to know a huge amount of in-depth Romulan stuff. But then again, Star Trek doesn't really exist anymore outside of the JJ verse, and they don't flesh out anything because they're dumb action movies. It's hoping the new CBS series is good. Are there any shows that you miss? I personally miss Mailbox. I don't feel like there's anything you do now that replaces it. Except this! No, actually there isn't. I'd love to say there is. I'd love to say, well, you know, I'd love to do this, but one, that would encourage people to ask for it to come back, and secondly, I think some formats have just sort of had their time, you know? What worked back then maybe doesn't work now, and it's not something I'm interested in doing anymore. So, channels evolve, channels change. I have specific focuses now, and I'm actually a lot happier for doing that, and since I have limited time, I don't really dwell on the past stuff, honestly. What's currently your favorite game of 2016? I mean, unless you count Overwatch, which was also one of my favorites of 2015 because I was in the beta. Overwatch is certainly the game I play the most of, but probably Doom so far, honestly. It's been some fairly decent games. I don't have a top 10 yet, though. I'm waiting to see what October and November brings, and we're currently in the summer drought. Do you care that we care? That's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah, I think everybody does, but I think there's an unhealthy level of caring that you care. And there's a separation that I think needs to be put between a content creator and their audience. It can be very unhealthy to encourage a community, a following that looks up to you too much, that is obsessed too much with your life. You know, it becomes very creepy, it becomes very unhealthy. So, of course I care that you care. I just want to keep people at arm's length if possible. And that's more for their benefit than it is for mine. But it's for both. Oh god, that's a question. Zanko Gaming, I run a small YouTube channel. Have you got any tips on maintaining a positive community and following? Turn off your YouTube comments. That's the answer to that. YouTube comments are shit. There is nothing you can do about that unless you have a massive team of moderators deleting half the stuff that gets posted. Turn your YouTube comments off. Then you'll get a positive community, whatever that means.
This is an interesting one. So, Dalek Sam asks, I'm a sim racer and I play a fairly well-known game called iRacing. It's known for being highly expensive with a sub fee of $13 a month, as well as $12 per car, $15 per track, with discounts for buying in bulk and longer subs. I personally think the investment I've made so far has been worth the money, as the quality of racing available is unmatched, with the content itself having extremely high quality and authenticity. My question is, do you think pricing models like this are sustainable for other types of games? I think that they're sustainable for very niche specialist games. You know, there's a reason why Train Simulator has thousands of dollars of DLC, because its audience is very hardcore. You know, it wants a very specific kind of experience. It is a game that's deliberately designed not to appeal to a mass audience, and in order for the quality to be very high and them to continue to produce it, they kind of have to milk that small audience. It's almost like Patreon, really, when you think about it. You know, Patreon is funding platform whereby very niche content can be paid for by a small audience, but they're paying a disproportionate amount of money to get it. So I think that the model probably works pretty well, and I think it's a solid model for very, very niche specialist games, which iRacing, you know, within sim racing obviously is. I would imagine there are, you know, there are actually similar situations with flight sim games as well, you know, very expensive. They're more often than not very pricey for expansions. And train simulation games, things like that as well. So they're not games designed for the mass market. They're not games designed for your average demographic. So yeah, I think those models actually do work pretty well for those kind of games. I don't even think that's a question. Like, it's like something bad is happening. Am I okay with it? No. Next question. I'm not, you know, but ultimately, unfortunately, I don't keep track of the PC scene in Japan. That's a little niche for me. Not to mention it's not very large either. In what order would you rank the Star Wars movies from favorite to least favorite? Empire Strikes Back at the top, followed by the original Star Wars, followed by Return of the Jedi, followed by Revenge of the Sith, followed by Attack of the Clones, followed by Phantom Menace. In that order, from best to worst. Oh, there's a seventh one as well. Where would I put that? Third. I'd put it before Return of the Jedi. Yep, so Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars, Force Awakens, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Attack on Titan? Attack on Titan? What the fuck? Yes, Attack on Titan was better than Phantom Menace. Yes! Yeah, Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace. And Attack on Titan! Remember when Chewbacca ripped that Titan's head off? Fucking amazing. Jesus Christ. What is wrong with my brain? Any thoughts on the current state of Overwatch? It's fine. Ranking sucks. I have no interest in playing competitive mode. It seems like a waste of time. That game is like, hey, I can jump in for 10 minutes to get a round in and not really mind so much if the result wasn't that great. I don't want to be stuck in 30, 40 minutes. That's no. No. Incidentally, Attack on Titan would have worked a lot better if they had snow speeders and tow cables. Just want to point that out. Anyway. Attack on Titan. Jesus Christ. Attack on Titan. Oh my god. Anyway. It's fine. Zenyatta needs a buff. No doubt about that. I still find Mei to be an annoying fucking character. Like, you know, I'm beginning to appreciate Cliff Blazinski's way of doing things, where he wants an FPS that doesn't have a bunch of hard stuns and things like that. You know, Mei isn't fucking infuriating. You know, anything that has a big knockdown or a thing that takes away control of your character is annoying. But overall, I play Overwatch daily, and I still like it a lot. Not as much as Attack on Titan. What is your favorite movie of all time and why? The Shawshank Redemption, because it is a fucking masterpiece. And my second favorite movie is the original Blues Brothers, because it's bloody hilarious and a masterpiece. Other than voting with our wallets, what can consumers do? We just had this question. We're not going to answer that one again. X3A3KG, your name is too long to say. As you sometimes voice your sadness for lack of good RTS games, did you know that Supreme Commander Forged Alliance has an active community in Forged Alliance Forever? I absolutely do know that. Here's the problem with getting into stuff like that. Everyone that still plays that game is way too fucking good at it, which means that on an entry level, it is very, very difficult to be able to be even close to being competitive. That could be an issue with games later on in their life cycle, particularly with RTS. It's so hard to really break into that scene because everyone that's played it has been playing it for years. Unless you find yourself a teacher. Jeez. Yeah, that would be tricky. That would be very tricky. Do you feel the ability to patch mods in games so easily these days has made devs lazy? No. Not in the slightest. Devs do not expect you to fix their game through patching and modding. It sometimes happens, but they are not launching their game with that expectation. Unless, of course, your name is Double Fine and your game was Space-Based DF9! No, I don't feel that is true at all. Would you consider delving into PlanetSide 2 again? Asks that AJW. Yeah, sure. I mean, at some point. Again, time commitments. Again, only so many hours in the day. Again, playing other things right now. If you could pick any other job in the world, would you keep your current one and why? Yes, because it's great. Why the hell would I want to do anything else? Seriously. Why would I? It's great. It's an awesome job. I should feel very grateful for having it. So, yeah. No, I wouldn't swap it for anything. Billy Boy 1912, have you played the recent revivals of the CRPG genre? I played those. I streamed Pillars of Eternity, I had Wasteland 2 on my top 10 games of that year. How do I feel about the revival of the genre? It's great. Awesome. You know, it's always nice to see a genre be revived, especially with such great examples of it. Do I have the time to play them? Nope. How do you feel with your reputation with the viewers has been over the last couple of years? Understandably, the number of videos has slowed down a bit. What do you feel like you're less liked and respected or more liked? I just go off data. Like, it's impossible to survey a giant audience and say, hey, do you still respect me as much as you did? You're never going to get good answers to that. I go off data and views. The videos are doing fine. The channel is highly profitable. It's doing great. So, I don't really worry so much about that. There's the occasional episode where I'll be a bit concerned that the viewers might sort of lose respect for my opinion. Like stuff like Technomancer recently, having the number of people turn around and say, well, actually, all your criticism doesn't matter because I think you're shit at the game, sucks. It doesn't feel good. And I also think that they're wrong. Because I think I justify my opinions very, very fucking well. But honestly, the internet is a shithole. And there are a bunch of people on it that just want to try and tear you down. So there's really not a great deal of time languishing in an obsessive loop of feedback whereby you're just making yourself miserable. And I know I'm saying that as somebody that does that, but I know it's wrong, and I'm trying to get help for it. So, yeah, I don't really know. All I know is the data says that they haven't, and they're still watching my stuff, so that's really all I care about. It's a business. You know? It is a business. I'm supposed to treat it like one. That's how you stay successful. Do you think game design has been going towards a bad direction or seriously regressed in the last decade? No. That's way too general a question. I think. Way too general a question. Some genres have simplified, some genres have streamlined, and then there are other genres which have gained complexity and entirely new genres that have sprung up over time. Gaming changes. You can't keep making the same kind of game for 20 years and expect people to keep buying it. Unless your name's Call of Duty, for whatever reason. Or Mario. They keep buying that. Now, I don't think game design has got significantly worse. I think you should take it on a case-by-case basis. For every AAA game that strips away a bunch of complexity in favor of silliness, there's a really cool indie game or something along those lines that has decided to experiment. Gaming is more diverse and awesome than it's ever been. You just gotta know where to look. Oh, God. I can't answer this question, and I just want to make it clear that I can't. It's like, how do I cut my parasocial relationship and ties and obsessions over certain pieces of media to the point of unhealthy thinking? identifying as a fan. I feel it's a defense mechanism and a distraction against my nihilistic thoughts. Okay, all right. I'm not a psychologist. I make YouTube videos on the internet. I cannot answer that. I can't answer that. That's deep human psychology stuff. No. Interesting one. Colonel Chocomel asks, picked up Doom on the Steam sale, and it made me wonder, what is your favorite single-player level in any FPS ever? Ooh. God damn, that's a difficult one. I still think it might be the castle, the first level of Return to Castle Wolfenstein. It evoked the feeling of the original, had a good amount of complexity to it. It showcased a wide variety of combat styles within the first level. It rewarded exploration, and it was just incredibly well put together. I think that is probably my favorite. Yeah, I'd say so. Next. Argark asks, in these years you've come to create more and more space between you and your community, rightfully so. Do you ever wish you had a different temper to deal with all this shit? Do you ever wish your personality was better? No shit! I absolutely do. Yeah, everybody wishes, at least I hope everybody wishes that they were a better person. Of course. It's a very odd one. It's like, do you wish you didn't suck as much? Yes. Next question. Do not Chris. How big is the current staff of Cynical Brit? 3. Me. I'm do the content. Chris. He does PR, social media, and occasional editing, as well as uploads to YouTube, and keeping the channel ticking over on a day-to-day basis, just to dispel what people think. I do the vast majority of the editing, not Chris. Chris does editing on Content Patch and usually video essays. Everything else I do myself. Don't really have an answer to that one. Is Secret Hitler Sundays coming back in the near future? Probably not, because I can't get the people for it, you know? I would love to keep playing it, but apparently other people are not so interested or are too busy, so yeah, it probably won't come back as a result. I've already answered the CSGO gambling thing. Will we see content on mods on your channel again from Bladestorm91? I am never going to discount that possibility, but I'm not going to promise or make a series about it either. Simple as that. If I find a really cool mod that I enjoyed playing and I would like to showcase it, sure, but I'm not going to turn it into a series because then people have the expectation that I'll cover a lot of them and I don't. What can a fan do to have a positive effect on your mood? I have one piece of advice. You know the time when you're very, very tempted to write a 5-paragraph essay about a 5-second thing that I said that picks it apart and debates it and all sorts of things like that? Maybe don't do that thing. Think about what use it is. Think about why you're writing it. Are you writing it for your own personal gratification, or are you writing it to be useful? Because I can tell you for a fact, it's probably not useful. And it's very irritating to be scrutinized as much as that, to the point where you have to think about every single word. Oh god, I didn't talk about Jenna. Oh god, I'm so stupid. I'm dead, I'm fucked. I'm gonna be sleeping on the couch tonight. Oh Jesus, wow, why did I do that? Jenna is the CEO of the company, responsible for all the financials. She's also responsible for all the sponsorships, which keep us afloat. She's incredibly important and probably the most important person in the company. Please don't fucking kill me. Oh, God. I'm dead. I'm fucking dead. It's been an honor serving with you. Please tell my grandchildren I love them very much. Oh, shit. I'm glad she's not watching. She's gonna watch the VOD, isn't she? You fuckers gonna tell her, aren't you?
Trust me, this is for the best. I think it might be good to end it now. It's less painful this way. It's not a real gun. Pretty cool, though, right? Look at the fucking size of this thing, Jesus. Oh yeah, I forgot. It still has CO2 in it. Probably should take that out. Alright, cool. Alright. Next question. The recent incident with NerdCubed showed that declaring this... Let's try again. The recent incident with NerdCubed showed that declaring the state the game is in at the point of a review would help all of humanity. What? Wouldn't it be Tobler? What the shit is this question? This is fucking autocorrect going insane. Wouldn't it be Toblerone? Oh my god! The answer is yes, it would be Toblerone. Ah! Oh, perfect. Oh my god. Right, yeah. I don't know what any of this question means. God damn. That question's inappropriate. Not answering it. What are you most proud of? Having lots of money. No, seriously though. I'm most proud of the fact that I can get 300,000 people in a day to listen to me talk for 28 minutes about dry industry bullshit. That is incredibly awesome. And most people don't get to do that. But would it be Toblerone? No, I don't know. Okay. Alright. Okay, I'm gonna cry now. Oh my god. Okay, stop. Just stop. Feel free to bring me Toblerones at CoxCon, by the way. They're pretty cool. I like the white chocolate ones the most. Okay. What the fuck is this anime shit? Why is this here? Oh god. This is all falling apart. That's it. We're done. We're just done. This is the end of video game criticism. Oh my god. Right. Already talked about that. Kind of already talked about this, but, you know, I've always said Yahtzee is the answer to this question. Who have you always wanted to be as guest on Co-optional but never able to get Yahtzee? But we are going to be getting him at some point, so. I don't think there's anyone else that comes to mind, really. Nah. I mean, we've got Xavier Woods. I'm pretty much, that's the pinnacle of my career. Couldn't ask for anything more than that. Although, I heard Samoa Joe is into Paradox
grand strategy games. I'd love to talk to Samoa Joe about Paradox Grand Strategy. That would be... Yeah. Anyway. That is a really long question. Please don't post really long questions. Kuro Masato, do you think developers working on large-scale multiplayer games like League, Overwatch, and maybe even MMOs should make a move to being more open about what they're working on balancing-wise? Aren't they already? Like, I don't know about League, but I know Blizzard has been lately. Blizzard's been open for years about balancing in StarCraft 2. They're very communicative with Overwatch as well. I think that quite a lot of devs are very communicative about that. Hell, even the Clash Royale guys are. They warn you several weeks in advance of balance changes, and they always explain why they're going to do them. So, I don't think it's actually too much of a problem at all. I think most companies are fairly communicative about that. Moa123, which series has been your favorite to make and why? I mean, I think it is like... talk about X for Y minutes is fun, because it's just, I gotta talk about things that I really am interested in, and I don't have to worry about anything else. I don't have to worry about, oh, you know, is the format good? Oh, will people care? I just say it, and people do. So, it's very privileged. I'm very privileged to be in that position. Don't know if I can answer that, really. Don't know a huge amount about JRPGs. Let's see. Shook50 says... I got the recent Final Fantasy X port on PC and really enjoyed it, but also made me want to play Dragon Quest VIII again, since those were my favorite games on PS2. Almost all the Final Fantasies have been ported to PC, some better than others, but none of the Dragon Quest games. Is this just because Final Fantasy is more popular? I don't know. Actually, I don't know why they haven't been ported. Because they've been ported to other formats. I mean, hell, they're even on iOS for the most part. I don't know why they haven't brought them to PC. I'd love to play Dragon Quest VIII again. It's a great game. Couldn't tell you. I have no reason. Go ask Squeenix. Let's say I want to publish a finished indie game through Steam Greenlight. Should I send out review copies before or after the game is greenlit? After. Don't send it before. Nobody cares about playing games that haven't been greenlit yet, because that sort of puts you at the bottom of a very, very large pile. So I would strongly suggest that you send out review copies about a week before the game actually comes out. That's generally a good time to do it. If you want to do any sort of pre-release promo with YouTube channels or Twitch streamers, obviously, like, you know, maybe send it out earlier to them, but for review copies, usually a week in advance is good. 2 if you're feeling real generous, but bear in mind that a lot of people don't want to cover a game weeks before it comes out because most people don't care. Unless they can buy the game, they don't give a damn. They don't watch it. We found that time and time again with things like PAX coverage and previews that we put out that were way too early. No, we are not doing a social eating channel, thank you very much. How do you organize your recordings? Asks Marsh. Audio with audio, video with video, subdivided with project. How do you back up your data? I mean, I back up my data on a big hard drive. I also use Dropbox and cloud syncing for Adobe Cloud. That works pretty well if I want to back up project files. Everything's auto-saved, everything's saved in separate directories. I have 2 separate directories for audio. I have audio that hasn't been put through the compressor and EQ yet, and audio that has. Project files always go in the same thing, and everything gets exported to the Dropbox at the end. That's how it works. Works pretty well. Nice, slick system where I know everything is. Alright, I'm going to do a few more, and then I'm going to wrap it up, because I've been on air for an hour and a half, and talking for an hour and a half is pretty tricky, and my throat's getting a little bit croaky, plus I could use some lunch. So I'll do a couple more questions over the last few minutes. I apologize for not being able to cover them all, but that's just the way of it. Sandwich Man asks, have you played Aeon Altar yet, which is the RPG where you use smartphones as controllers, or are you planning to? I am planning to when I go home for my couple of weeks visit to England. My brother's going to be there along with his girlfriend and probably my sister as well. They're going to get him around the TV and we'll play some Aeon Altar. That sounds great. It's just you need like 4 or 5 people to play that game and you need them in the same room and we don't generally have that. But yeah, Aeon Altar looks really cool. I actually played a really early version of it. I think at PAX a few years ago and I was really intrigued by it. So it's awesome to see that that's out. So I'm going to check it out, definitely. As to whether or not I'll cover it, it could be difficult to cover it. Because of the weird nature of that game. What is the worst interaction you've had with a developer? Fun creators? Definitely fun creators. I mean, these are the guys that got into arguments with our lawyer, that being a lawyer that represented Maker Studios, using a fake lawyer. At some point, I really hope those emails come out, because they're fucking hilarious. But, yeah, that probably won't happen, because obviously, I don't want to restart that issue, and I don't want to put our lawyer in any trouble. You know, a lot of that's confidential, but I've seen the emails, and holy fuck! They were crazy people! So, yeah. Fun creators with Guys of the Wolf. May they never ever make a video game again. Any games you consider revisiting? All the time. Do I have the time? No. Do you believe there are any channels on YouTube where you think you can identify a decision that caused their downfall? A few. Definitely a few. Some of them... I think most channels die off because they become stagnant and because they attach themselves too much to one thing. Like monogaming channels. If you just play one game... When that game gets less popular, so does their channel, and they don't adapt to that, and their audience doesn't translate well to other things. And then, of course, there are the people that did kind of silly stuff, like Athene's channel really tanked quite hard when he's putting a video out every fucking hour, which is nuts. Like, people were unsubbing the hell out of him for that. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of different times. And then, of course, there were people who just got lazy. They got successful and then didn't put out as much content anymore and didn't put out as good content anymore, didn't put as much work into it, and then people were like, well, fuck you, I'm going elsewhere then. Alright, I'm going to do one more and then I'm going to wrap it up. Again, my voice is starting to go now. We'll hopefully do another one of these next week. Are there any games that come out this year that you're excited about that you didn't get a chance to play or talk about yet? That's from Not Into Manga. There's a few, not a huge number, I have to admit. I generally don't get hyped up for games before they come out. I still want to play Battlefield 1, even though it's maybe not looking as good as I'd initially hoped. Too many automatic weapons in the damn thing right now. I'm still looking forward to playing it, though. I want to play... Oh, God, what is it? Is it Project Phoenix or Phoenix Point? From the ex-developer of... It's Phoenix Point, right? Yeah, from the ex-developer of XCOM. Ex-developer of XCOM, that's an awkward thing. Yeah, I want to see what's going on with that. I don't think that's coming out this year, though. It's by Snapshot Games. That I'm really intrigued to see what's going on with that. What else? Hand of Fate 2. Looking forward to that. Cuphead, if it ever comes out. I still want to play Titanfall 2. I'm hoping they make some good improvements to that, because it's not like I didn't hate... I did not hate the original Titanfall. I actually liked it a lot. It's just, I played about 20, 30 hours of it, and I'm like, I've had my fill of it now. So, hopefully the next one can have a little bit more longevity. So yeah, I guess there's a few examples of games that I'd like to play. There'll no doubt be plenty more. Civilization 6, obviously, as well. That's a good one. Alright, I'm going to wrap it up, folks. Hour and a half talking. That will do for the time being. I'm going to try and do these a little bit more regularly. I'd like to thank everyone that sent in questions and apologize to everybody that I could not answer the questions of. There were a lot of freaking questions. So, big thanks to everybody that submitted questions, and I'll try and do some of these a bit more regularly. I'm hoping, maybe once a fortnight. That will be great. So we can really get these questions out of the way. Thanks for your support, folks, and of course, if you have not picked up some of our throwback merch yet, we have them in limited quantities right down there. bit.ly/tbmerch, we're selling a bunch of shirts, some comeback stuff that we have some spares, so it will be great if you had a look at those. Thanks a lot, folks. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, get some food, try and recover my voice, and then hopefully do another video today. Of course, Co-optional Podcast airs tomorrow. Ow, I bit my tongue. Fuck. At 3 p.m. Eastern, ow, on Tuesday, on twitch.tv/TotalBiscuit. I'm going to try and stop killing myself now. That would be great. I'll see you next time.